New Orleans, Louisiana, October 12, 1965. In the heavy, suffocating heat of that afternoon, when the air itself seemed to press down on a man's shoulders, Henry Fontenot, a dishwasher forgotten even by fate, noticed something no one else ever cared to see: an old can of used grease tossed behind the restaurant, glinting under the weak light like a worthless scrap. For years, that grease had dripped off the pans without meaning a thing. To everyone else, it was trash. But to Henry, in that instant, it was a calling. Small, almost ridiculous, but real. With overdue bills, nights of hunger, and a job that burned more than it paid, he made one simple decision. He filled an old tin can with that hot grease. It didn't change the world, but it changed something inside him. This is the story of a tired, underestimated man who had nothing but his wounded hands, and a family betting what little they still had on his courage. What Henry found that day wasn't a miracle. It was the first stubborn, hidden step toward a slow turning point. Without revealing what comes next, I'll only say this: Henry thought he was just collecting grease. In truth, he was collecting the future of his own family. But before we continue with the video, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The morning heat in the lower 9th Ward rose before the sun did. It slipped through the thin wooden walls of Henry Fontenot's house, warming the air with the heavy scent of damp wood and yesterday's coffee. At 5 a.m., the neighborhood was still more shadow than light, but poverty didn't sleep in that part of New Orleans. It breathed with the people. Henry sat on the edge of his bed, rolling his sore shoulders before pulling on his faded work shirt. The fabric scraped against the burns on his arms, small reminders of boiling water and frying pans that had splattered him the night before. The floorboards groaned under his weight, and the sound blended with the quiet breathing of his children in the next room. Light breaths, thin breaths. You could hear hunger if you lived with it long enough. In the kitchen, Alma warmed weak coffee on a low flame. She didn't turn when Henry entered. She just poured the dark liquid into a chipped mug and slid it toward him. The gesture was tender, practiced. Marriage in poverty wasn't built on grand declarations, only on small offerings of strength. "Long day ahead?" she asked softly. Henry nodded. 14 hours, maybe more. She swallowed. "I'll make the beans stretch for tonight." He hated hearing that. Beans weren't supposed to stretch. But sometimes, in the lower 9th Ward, food had to do things it was never meant to do. He touched her hand. "I'll bring something home, if they let me." She didn't answer. Hope was expensive. She used it carefully. Outside, the sun climbed slowly, lighting the row of sagging houses and muddy streets. Henry walked fast, boots splashing through puddles left over from last week's storm. The air smelled of river water, metal, and the sharp tang of diesel drifting from the docks. The Bayou Belle restaurant stood near the riverfront, an old building with peeling paint, and a sign that flickered when the wind hit it just right. To most, it was a modest diner. To Henry, it was the place where he traded his body for wages. Inside, chaos greeted him. The clattering of pans, the hiss of frying oil, the barked orders of cooks who had already lost their patience by sunrise. "Morning, Fontenot," Big Ray, the head cook, grunted. Henry tied his apron tight. "Morning." He stepped toward the deep sinks, a mountain of plates already waiting. The first plunge of his hands into the steaming water sent pain shooting up his arms. But the burn was familiar, and in an odd way, comforting. It meant he was working. Working meant his children would eat. Hours passed in a blur of steam and grease. By noon, his fingers were swollen and red. His knuckles cracked. He stacked plates faster than he could think, moving in a rhythm beaten into him by necessity. But every time he walked past the back door, something caught his eye. The grease drum, a huge metal barrel where the cooks dumped gallons of leftover fat from frying pans, griddles, and roasting trays. The smell was thick: burnt meat, smoke, salt, and waste. Most workers avoided it because flies swarmed around it. Henry didn't avoid it. Something about that barrel tugged at old memories, gentle ones, buried deep beneath years of hard work. Images of his grandmother came back to him, standing over a wood-fired stove in the Louisiana countryside, stirring a large pot of melted fat and lye, making soap, turning scraps into survival. "Waste nothing, Henry," she used to say, tapping his forehead. "What the world throws away might be what saves you." He tried to shake the thought. It felt childish, foolish even, the kind of idea hunger whispers when a man has run out of options. But the drum called to him each time he passed it. During his 5-minute break, one of the few moments of stillness in his day, Henry stepped outside into the humid air. He wiped his forehead with his sleeve and leaned against the back wall of the restaurant. The grease drum stood a few feet away, quiet, innocent, filled with something no one valued. He stared at it. A ridiculous idea formed slowly, like a shy animal approaching. What if I took just a little? Not to steal, but to try. Just to try. His heart thumped in his chest. He had no room for dreams, yet here one was. Small, trembling, stubborn. He looked around. No one. Big Ray was yelling orders inside. The waitresses were too busy rushing between tables. The alley behind the restaurant was empty except for a stray cat and a row of rusted trash bins. Henry reached for an empty coffee can near the back steps. He wiped it with his apron, swallowed hard, and dipped it into the drum. The grease oozed thickly into the can, filling it with a sluggish heaviness. His hands shook as he pulled it free. Not from fear, though there was plenty of that, but from possibility. Possibility was heavier than any pan he had ever washed. He sealed the can and hid it inside his lunch pail. His heart pounded as he walked back into the kitchen. Nothing exploded. No one shouted. Life continued exactly as before, but something inside Henry had shifted. By the time his shift ended, night had draped itself over the neighborhood. The air felt heavier, the sound of cicadas louder. Henry walked home with the lunch pail swinging at his side. Each metallic clink of the can inside felt like a decision knocking on his ribs. When he opened the door, Alma was sitting at the table, sewing a loose button onto their son's shirt. "You look worn out," she said. "I am." He set the lunch pail down with care, opened it slowly. Alma leaned forward, expecting maybe leftovers, bread crusts, a piece of chicken, anything. But when she saw the can of grease, her eyebrows knit together. "Henry, what is that?" Her voice wasn't judgmental, only tired. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Grease, from the restaurant." "For what?" He hesitated. Shame and hope twisted inside him like two wires sparking. "I want to try making soap, like my grandmother used to." Alma looked at him for a long moment. Then she set the needle down and placed her hand over his. "If it can change something, even a little, then try." Her voice cracked on the word, try. In that moment, the world didn't change. But a door opened, quietly, modestly, bravely, and Poverty felt, for the first time in a long time, unsteady. The kitchen was quiet the next morning, but the smell was not. As soon as Henry lit the old stove and set the dented pot on top, the thick scent of warmed grease drifted through the house, heavy, smoky, strangely familiar. It clung to the walls, soaked into the curtains, and settled on the wooden floor like morning fog. Alma stepped into the doorway, tying her hair back. She looked from Henry to the pot, and back again. Her eyes weren't doubtful, they were searching. "You sure you remember how she did it?" she asked. Henry stirred the melting grease with a wooden spoon that had seen better years. He tried to picture his grandmother's hands, dark, steady, and always smelling faintly of pine ash. "Not exactly," he admitted, "but I remember the rhythm of it, and the smell. The smell. That was what transported him more than anything." As the grease softened into a liquid pool, something in his memory opened like a slow, creaking door. He was 10 again, barefoot on the packed dirt floor of his grandmother's small farmhouse outside Opelousas. She would stand over the big black pot hung above the fire, the flames licking its sides. Her voice would float through the room like a hymn. "Waste nothing, Henry. God don't like waste, and poverty don't forgive it." She would stir for long minutes, then let the mixture rest. Stir again. Rest. Always patient, always steady. Soap making wasn't a craft. It was survival shaped by fire. Henry blinked back into the present as the grease sizzled softly. He knew this wasn't a guaranteed path. It wasn't even a reasonable one. It was a fragile thread of memory in a world that only respected certainty, but he had so little left to gamble with. And this felt like something that belonged to him. He added water carefully, watching the mixture bubble. A faint plume of steam curled upward, carrying the unmistakable scent of old recipes and older sacrifices. The children woke with wrinkled noses. "Papa, what's that smell?" his daughter asked, rubbing her eyes. Henry smiled apologetically. "Work." The little girl nodded. What else could she do? In her world, Papa's work had 100 smells. Burnt grease, sweat, metal, and the sourness of his clothes after the late-night shifts. But today, the smell was different. Today, the smell carried history. Henry worked slowly, letting the grease heat until it shimmered. He stirred with a rhythm that surprised him, gentle, even comforting. Alma watched from the table, mending a torn collar. "You know," she said quietly, "your grandmother would be proud. You're trying, and trying is something." He didn't answer. Pride was a luxury he couldn't afford yet. Instead, he focused on the pot. When the grease reached the right consistency, he mixed in the washing soda he had bought with their last few coins. It wasn't exactly the lye his grandmother had used, but it was what he had. The mixture fizzed sharply, then calmed. A thick, creamy paste formed. Henry stared at it, stunned. "It's working," he whispered. Alma rose from her chair and came to stand beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. They just watched the mixture, listening to it bubble like a quiet promise. Then the children crowded around the stove, curious and uncertain. Henry dipped a small spoon into the mixture and let it cool before rubbing it between his fingers. It felt rough, imperfect, but it felt like soap. Alma touched the cooled paste. "For a first try," she said softly, "it's something." Her voice trembled, not with fear this time, but with hope held carefully, like a candle in the wind. Later that afternoon, Henry cut the cooled mixture into rough bars and laid them on a wooden plank near the window. The bars were misshapen, oddly colored, and smelled a bit smoky, but they were real, tangible, his. He stared at them for a long time, his chest tight with something he hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Still, doubt crept close. "What if nobody wants this?" he murmured. Alma squeezed his hand. "Someone will. Maybe not many, maybe not fast, but someone." Her faith was always a step ahead of his. That evening, Henry wrapped 2 bars in brown paper and walked to the neighbor's house, a small place with peeling white paint and a porch that dipped toward one side. Miss Lorraine, a widow who scrubbed clothes for half the neighborhood, opened the door. "Evening, Henry," she said. "Everything all right?" He swallowed hard. His palms were sweating. I made something. Soap. Wanted to see if you'd try it." She raised an eyebrow. "Soap? You? It ain't pretty," he admitted. "But it might work better than the cheap stuff from the corner store." Miss Lorraine took the bar, sniffed it, pressed it with her thumb. "Looks rough, I know, but rough don't scare me." She paused, then added with a soft smile, "And neither do you." She pulled a few coins from her apron pocket and pressed them into Henry's hand. "Here, worth it, even if it don't lather." Henry froze. I didn't mean for you to pay. You made it," she said. "That's worth something." He walked home clutching the coins so tightly his knuckles whitened. The first sale, small, humble, but real. A crack opened in the wall of impossibility that had surrounded him all his life. That night, after the children slept, Henry and Alma sat at the kitchen table. The lantern flickered, throwing their shadows against the wall, 2 silhouettes leaning towards something invisible, but shared. Alma whispered, "Maybe this is how it begins." Henry stared at the coins on the table. They weren't much, barely enough to buy a loaf of bread, but to him, they felt like the first stones of a foundation he had never dared to build. He thought of the grease drum behind the restaurant, of the wasted fat thrown away every single day, of the memory of his grandmother's hands guiding his, and he felt something inside him stand up straighter. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'll make more." Alma didn't speak. She just reached for his hand, holding it gently, like a promise, like a prayer. Outside, the night hummed with the quiet sounds of a poor neighborhood settling into sleep. Inside, something new was waking. The kitchen was still dark when Henry woke the next morning, but the scent of yesterday's experiment lingered in the air, smoky, fatty, and strangely comforting, like the ghost of a memory that refused to leave. He slipped quietly out of bed, careful not to wake Alma, and stepped into the kitchen where the early dawn spilled a faint blue light through the window. The bars of soap lay on the wooden plank where he'd left them to dry. They weren't pretty. Some had cracked edges. Others looked uneven, as if they'd been carved by a nervous hand. But they were solid, real, proof that his grandmother's words hadn't vanished into childhood. He picked up one bar, feeling its weight in his palm. "Rough," he murmured. But there was pride in that word. Rough meant it came from hard work. He set it down and reached for the coffee pot. The liquid was thin and bitter, but it warmed him. He needed the warmth more than the taste. Alma entered a few minutes later, her hair tied loosely, her eyes still soft with sleep. She looked at the soap and gave him a small smile. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep, thinking." Henry nodded. "About trying again. About making them better." Alma crossed her arms, watching him. "You will. You're stubborn enough." "Stubborn keeps us alive," he replied. She didn't disagree. After a quick breakfast of cornbread and coffee, Henry walked to the backyard with the pot, spoon, and an empty pail. The morning sun was rising fast, warming the damp grass beneath his feet. The neighborhood was slowly waking. Kids running barefoot between houses, women hanging laundry, men heading to the docks. Nobody noticed Henry's quiet determination. They rarely noticed the dreams of poor men. He set up an old metal stand and placed the pot on it. A small fire crackled underneath. As the flame grew, the scent of burning wood, drifted into the air, mixing with the heavy smell of the grease he'd brought home. He melted the fat slowly, stirring with steady strokes. This time, his movements felt more sure. Muscle memory, instinct, a craft inherited, not learned. While he worked, Alma stepped outside with a bowl of laundry. She paused, watching the smoke curl upward. "You remember more than you think," she said. Henry didn't answer right away. His eyes were fixed on the pot, on the way the grease shimmered and pooled. "I remember how she used to say, 'Soap ain't just soap, it's dignity.'" Alma's hands stilled. She knew what he meant. Clean clothes, clean hands, clean skin. In families like theirs, all of that felt like luxury. Henry continued stirring. "If I can give that to people, maybe they'll give something back. Maybe they will," Alma said softly. By midday, the new mixture was ready. Henry poured it carefully into a shallow wooden box lined with paper. The warm paste settled into place, smoothing out with a quiet living weight. Alma watched from the doorway. "Looks better than yesterday. Still rough," Henry said. "Rough works," she replied. He smiled. She always had a way of grounding him. In the afternoon, Henry returned to the kitchen to check the bars he'd made yesterday. They had firmed up more. He cut one cleanly and wrapped it in brown paper. "I'm going to try selling another," he told Alma. "To who?" He exhaled. "Maybe at the market. Maybe someone washing clothes. I'll just try." Alma stepped close and fixed the collar of his shirt. "Then go." Her touch steadied him more than the coffee had. The walk to the market took him along the edge of the Mississippi River. Boats rocked gently, ropes creaked, and seagulls circled above like restless thoughts. The market was busy even for a weekday. Women haggling over vegetables, men repairing nets, children weaving through the crowd. Henry stood still for a moment, the wrapped bar of soap heavy in his hand. The world moved around him, loud and alive, while he felt small and silent. Then he swallowed his fear and approached a woman scrubbing clothes in a tin wash basin near the stalls. Her hands were cracked and raw from lye-heavy soap sold cheaply in corner stores. "Ma'am," Henry began, voice tight, "I made something. Soap. Thought you might try it." She eyed him with suspicion. "You made it?" "Yes, ma'am." She took the bar, unwrapped it, and sniffed. "Smells strong." "It's meant to," he replied. "Cuts through grease. Won't burn your hands." She rubbed her thumb across its rough surface. "How much?" Henry froze. He hadn't thought of a price. Panic flooded in his chest. 10 cents, he said, unsure. The woman stared at him. Then she nodded slowly and reached into her apron. She handed him the coins. "Bring me another next week if it works," she said. "I will," Henry answered, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. As he walked away, the 10 cents in his pocket felt like a windfall, a confirmation, a tiny, fragile promise that maybe, just maybe, he was onto something. That evening, Henry returned home with 2 new bars ready to dry and 10 cents jingling in his pocket. Alma met him at the door. "How'd it go?" He placed the coins on the table. "She bought it." Alma pressed her hand over her mouth, eyes shining. "Henry, that's 2 sales." He nodded. "We're not there yet, but it's a start." They sat at the table long after the children went to bed, talking softly about the soap, about the possibilities, about the fear of hoping for too much. At one point, Alma whispered, "You know, seeing you like this, working on something that's yours, it makes this house feel different." Henry looked around. The peeling paint, the thin walls, the patched roof, nothing had changed, yet everything had. Because for the first time in years, there was more than survival inside those walls. There was movement, purpose, maybe even a future. Later that night, as Henry lay in bed, the faint scent of grease and wood smoke drifted from the kitchen. Instead of filling him with shame or fatigue, it filled him with something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, quiet, cautious, but alive. He closed his eyes and whispered into the darkness, "Tomorrow, I'll make more." And somewhere in the memory of his grandmother's voice, he could almost hear the faintest reply, "That's how it starts, Henry. That's how it starts." The next Saturday morning carried the restless hum of a neighborhood trying to survive. Laundry flapped on clotheslines like surrender flags in the humid breeze. Dogs barked at passing strangers, and the distant rumble of boats on the Mississippi echoed through the lower Ninth Ward. Henry stepped outside with a small cardboard box pressed tight against his chest. Inside it were 8 bars of soap, cut cleaner, shaped better, wrapped in brown paper with a thin piece of twine. Not beautiful, but presentable. Alma watched him from the doorway, her eyes full of encouragement and worry braided together. "You ready?" she asked. "No," Henry admitted, "but I'm going anyway." "That's what makes you ready," she whispered. He nodded and started walking. The shame came before he even reached the market. It rose in his throat like bitterness, thick, choking, familiar. What was he doing? A grown man printing labels by hand on scrap paper, selling rough soap made in a rusted pot. It felt small, foolish, beneath the weight of his responsibilities. But poverty doesn't give permission to be proud. Pride feeds no one, so he kept walking. The open-air market near St. Claude Avenue was alive with color and noise. Vendors shouting prices, children weaving through the crowd, fishermen laying out their morning catch. The smell of shrimp, spices, sweat, and frying dough filled the air. Henry swallowed hard and found an empty corner near a stall selling old tools. He set his box down and arranged his soaps carefully, though his hands trembled. He'd expected people to ignore him. He wasn't prepared for the stares, some curious, some amused, some pitying. A man walked by and chuckled. "Soap? Out here?" Henry forced a smile. "Homemade. Strong." The man kept walking. A woman paused, looked at the bars, frowned, and moved on without a word. Henry exhaled slowly. He felt the humiliation settle on his shoulders like a wet coat. He remembered his grandmother's voice. "Don't quit on the first laugh, Henry. Folks laugh because they don't understand yet." He stood straighter. After nearly an hour, an older woman with tired eyes and hands red from harsh detergents approached his table. She touched one bar, feeling its weight. "You the one give Miss Lorraine that soap?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." She said it didn't sting her hands. The woman looked down at her own cracked skin. "Mine burned something fierce lately." Henry picked up a bar. "This one's mild. Cuts through grease. Lasts longer than the store-bought." "How much?" 10 cents. She nodded without bargaining, a rare miracle in a poor neighborhood. She handed him a coin and placed the bar carefully in her basket. "One's fine," she said. "If it works, I'll be back." Henry felt something inside him swell. Not pride exactly, but a small, warm flicker of validation. He had sold his third bar. But the next test came harder. A group of young men, neighbors he'd grown up around, approached the stall. They weren't bad men, just boys who carried laughter like armor against their own struggles. "Fontenot," one of them said with a grin. "You selling soap now? What's next? Perfume?" The others laughed. The sound wasn't cruel, but it stung all the same. Henry forced a shrug. "I'm trying something new. Looks like something old," one joked. More laughter. Henry looked down, steadying himself. He could feel Alma's encouraging touch in his mind, the memory of her hand fixing his collar that morning. "I'm trying," he repeated softly, "because trying might be all we got." The laughter faded. The boys exchanged glances. They didn't understand his dream, but they understood those words. Every poor family did. The teasing stopped, and they walked on. As the sun climbed higher, more people passed by. Not many bought, but some did. One bar here, another there. Most asked questions. Some sniffed the soap. A few rolled it in their hands like stones pulled from the river. And slowly, very slowly, the box grew lighter. By mid-afternoon, Henry had sold 6 bars. 6. 6 wasn't much. 6 wouldn't fix the roof or pay the gas bill. But 6 meant strangers believed in something he made with his own hands. 6 meant demand. While packing up to go home, Henry felt a tug on his sleeve. He turned and saw a tall, thin man with rolled-up sleeves and soap-stained hands. The man looked like he'd spent his life doing laundry. "You got any left?" he asked. "Just 2. I'll take both." Henry blinked. "Both?" "Yes." The man pointed to the bars. "My wife says Miss Lorraine won't shut up about how her hands aren't burning anymore. If this stuff works half as good as she says, we need it." Henry nodded, still stunned. "That'll be 20 cents. The man paid without hesitation. As he walked away, Henry whispered, "Thank you," though the man was already out of earshot. He made the walk home in a kind of quiet disbelief. The coins in his pocket clinked softly, 80 cents in total. It wasn't wealth, it wasn't even comfort, but it was more money than he'd ever made outside the restaurant. When he reached the house, Alma ran to the door. "Well?" she asked, breathless. Henry emptied the coins onto the table. The sound was small, tiny metallic taps on the wood, but to Alma, it sounded like possibility. "Henry, 80 cents?" She covered her mouth. "That's almost $1. He nodded slowly. "I sold all of them." Alma threw her arms around his neck, holding him tightly. "I knew someone would see it. I knew it." "It's not big yet," Henry warned gently. "It doesn't have to be big," she whispered. "It just has to grow." That night, after the children fell asleep, Henry and Alma sat again at their small table. The lantern flickered, casting warm, unsteady shadows across the room. Henry traced the coins with his fingertips. "People laugh today." Alma set her hand over his. "Let them laugh. One day, they'll remember being wrong." He looked at her, feeling something he could not name. "I think," he said softly, "I might need to make more tomorrow." Alma smiled. "Then we'll make room." The walls were still thin. The bills were still late. The hunger still lingered in the corners of the house. But for the first time, the future didn't feel like a locked door. It felt like a window slowly sliding open. And tomorrow, Henry would step through it. The The next week at the Bayou Belle felt different, not easier. Nothing in that kitchen was ever easy, but different. Henry moved through the steam and noise with a quiet focus that came from knowing he had a purpose waiting at home. Each plate he scrubbed, each pan he scraped, each bucket of hot water he poured out, all of it fed the same thought. Tonight, I'll make more soap. Even the burns on his hands felt less cruel. Pain with purpose is a different kind of pain, but the kitchen had its own rhythm. Sharp, loud, chaotic. The cooks shouted, the dishwasher rattled, the grease fryer hissed like an angry spirit. And through all of it, Henry could feel Big Ray's eyes landing on him more often than usual. By noon, Ray finally said something. "You've been working faster lately," he grunted, flipping catfish onto the grill. Henry shrugged, just trying to keep up. Ray narrowed his eyes. "You trying too hard. Men only work like that when they hiding something." Henry froze for half a second. He forced a laugh. "Ain't hiding nothing." "Uh-huh," Ray muttered. "We'll see." Henry turned back to the sink, but his chest tightened. Fear curled in his stomach like a fist. If the restaurant found out he was taking grease, even if it was trash, they might fire him. Men had lost jobs for far less. He needed that job, and he needed the grease. That night, when the kitchen slowed down after the dinner rush, Henry slipped outside toward the grease drum. The alley was quiet except for the distant rumble of a streetcar and the river sloshing somewhere unseen. Fireflies blinked in and out near the trash bins. Henry lifted the lid and dipped his coffee can inside. The grease was still warm from the day's cooking, thick and golden. It clung to the can like syrup. He was just about to tuck it into his lunch pail when a voice spoke behind him. "What you doing, Fontenot?" Henry whipped around so fast the can nearly fell from his hands. Standing a few feet away, half hidden in the shadow of the back door, was Mr. Dufour, the owner of the Bayou Belle. A stocky man with rolled sleeves, a graying beard, and a stare sharp enough to cut meat. Henry's throat dried out instantly. I can explain," he stammered. Dufour stepped closer, his boots crunching on gravel. He pointed at the can of grease. "That better be for cleaning the back stove, 'cause if you stealin', it's trash," Henry blurted. "You throw it out every day. That ain't the point." Henry swallowed hard. His hands shook. The can of greasy metal felt heavier by the second. "I'm not selling it," he said. "I ain't feeding it to nobody. I'm just trying something at home." Dufour crossed his arms. Trying what? Henry hesitated, then did something he never imagined he'd do. He told the truth. "All my life, I watched my grandmother make soap from leftover grease. Folks bought it because it worked, and I just thought, maybe if I tried, maybe it could help my family. We're behind on bills. My kids." He stopped himself. "I'm just trying to make something out of nothing." Dufour's expression didn't change. He stared at Henry for a long, heavy moment. Henry braced himself for the words that would break him. "You're fired." Instead, Dufour sighed. "Fontenot, why didn't you just ask for it?" Henry blinked. "Ask? Yeah, it's trash. Trash costs me money to get hauled off. If you want the grease, take the grease." Henry stared at him speechless, half convinced he was dreaming. "But," Dufour added, raising a finger, "you gotta do one thing." Henry's stomach dropped. "What's that?" "Bring me a bar when you get it right." Henry let out a breath that was half relief, half disbelief. "Yes, sir, I can do that." Dufour nodded once, turned, and walked back inside. Henry stood there alone in the alley, the can of grease still warm in his hands. The night seemed lighter somehow, the air less oppressive. Even the buzzing of mosquitoes felt like applause. When Henry got home, Alma was sewing by lamplight. She looked up when he entered and immediately saw something different in his face. What happened? Henry set the lunch pail on the table, sat down, and finally smiled. A small, exhausted smile, but real. "I thought I was getting fired tonight." Alma's breath caught. "But I wasn't," Henry said. "Mr. Dufour caught me taking the grease." "Oh Lord, Henry." "I told him everything. About the soap, about the bills, about everything. And he said I could take the grease, as much as I want." Alma covered her mouth with her hand, tears gathering in her eyes. "He wants a bar when I get it right." She laughed, a soft, disbelieving sound. "Then we better make sure it's good." Henry nodded. Something inside him felt steadier, stronger. A new kind of hope, the kind built on action, not imagination. For the next few nights, Henry worked later than ever before, the kitchen at home filled with steam, smoke, and the thick, earthy smell of melting fat. Alma helped stir. The children helped wrap the bars. It became a family ritual, messy, tiring, and full of small victories. He experimented with ratios, temperatures, cooling times. Some batches turned chalky, others crumbled. Once, The whole mixture boiled over and nearly ruined the stove. But Henry didn't stop, because now the grease came freely, because now there was demand, because now he had something like permission from the world. A week later, Henry walked through the market again. This time, he didn't choose a corner near a tool vendor. He took a spot closer to the laundresses and fishermen, the people who needed strong soap. He sold 9 bars before noon. 9. 3 regular customers returned asking for more. 2 new ones came because they'd heard about that good-smelling soap made by the dishman from the Bayou Belle. Henry packed up with coins weighing down his pockets more heavily than ever before. On his walk home, his steps were lighter. The future didn't look easy, but it no longer looked impossible. That night, after everyone slept, Henry sat at the table alone. The lantern flickered gently. The box of wrapped soaps stood beside him, smelling faintly of wood ash and clean beginnings. He whispered into the quiet, "It's working." And for the first time in his life, he believed it. The backyard didn't become a workshop by choice. It became one by necessity. After his shifts at the Bayou Belle, Henry would come home, drop his apron, and head straight to the back of the house. There, under a sagging tarp tied between 2 posts, he melted fat in battered pots and stirred until his shoulders ached. The first week after the market sales, the neighborhood began noticing. The smell of melting grease drifted through wooden fences and into open windows. Kids wrinkled their noses, but older neighbors paused, recognizing something familiar. Something from a time when families made what they couldn't afford to buy. Demand didn't explode. It crept, quietly but steadily. Miss Lorraine now bought 2 bars a week. The fishermen asked for stronger batches to cut through river sludge. A few laundresses told him their hands were healing. Every night, Alma wrapped the bars carefully while the children watched. The little kitchen table became an assembly line. Rough, imperfect bars, but real. "People are coming back," she said one night. "That means something." Henry nodded, though worry gnawed at him. Growth was good, but growth cost time he didn't have. Time became Henry's new enemy. He woke before dawn to work, spent 14 hours washing dishes, came home and stirred hot grease until midnight. His hands took on a new kind of burn, slow, deep, and constant. His eyes grew hollow, his back stiffened. Yet every time he thought about stopping, he remembered the laundry owner who bought 10 bars, then 20. Word was spreading, slowly, but enough to matter. He could not stop now. One evening, while Henry crouched over the boiling pot, the sky shifted. A storm rolled in fast, the kind that struck New Orleans with no warning at all. Thunder cracked like wood snapping. "Henry!" Alma called from the doorway. "The wind!" Before she finished, the tarp ripped free from its ropes. Rain crashed down in sheets. The cooling bars, over 30 of them, softened instantly, losing shape, sliding off the racks. "No, no, please!" Henry grabbed at the bars, slipping in the mud, heart pounding with desperation. These bars were an entire week of work, a week of sleep lost, a week of hope. Alma rushed out, trying to shield the racks with the torn tarp. Rain whipped against her face. "Inside!" Henry shouted. "I'm not leaving you out here alone." They worked together until the storm passed, drenched, exhausted, defeated. By the time the sky cleared, more than half the bars were ruined. Henry sank into the mud, his clothes soaked, his spirit cracked. "We'll start again," Alma whispered, placing her hand on his back. Storms don't decide our future, but Henry felt it, felt how close they lived to the edge. A week's loss wasn't just inconvenient, it hurt their survival. The next morning, things grew worse. A city sanitation officer showed up with a clipboard and a neutral face. "Got a report," he said, walking toward the backyard. "Neighbors say there's an operation going on. Smells, smoke, runoff." Henry's stomach dropped. "I'm making soap, small batches, just to sell at the market. You got a permit for chemical goods?" Henry froze. "A permit?" The man sighed. "Look, I get it. Trying to earn a living. But the city doesn't care about that. Soap making's regulated. You need paperwork. How much does it cost?" "Depends, but not cheap." Henry felt the ground tilt. They could barely pay their light bill. The officer studied him. The clothes, the yard, the tired eyes. "Here's what I'll do," he said. "You got 2 weeks. Start the process. Show progress. When I come back, it better not look illegal." Henry nodded, the weight settling on him like wet wool. "Thank you." When the officer left, Alma leaned against the door, whispering, "A permit? With what money?" Henry didn't know, but giving up wasn't an option, so he kept working. A few days later, while Henry manned his stall at the market, a thin man with a bleach-stained shirt approached him. "You the soap man?" he asked. "That's me. I run a small laundry near Desire Street. People say your bars cut better than store-bought. I want 20. You got 20? Henry blinked. 20. It felt impossible and miraculous at the same time. "I can have them in a week," he said. The man nodded. "Bring them. If they're good, I'll need 20 every month." Henry walked home that day with a fire burning inside him. "A laundry wants 20 bars, he told Alma. She took a deep breath. "Then we do it, somehow." The week that followed nearly broke him. He slept 3 hours a night, stirred boiling pots until his arms trembled, wrapped bars until his fingers cracked, burned himself twice, nearly dropped an entire batch when his vision blurred from exhaustion. But he didn't stop, because now there was real money waiting. Permit money, roof money, future money, and because quitting meant everything stayed exactly the same. At the end of the 7th night, with sweat drying on his skin and smoke clinging to his clothes, Henry lined up 20 clean, solid bars on the table. Alma wrapped them gently, her fingers careful. "Reverent, you did it," she whispered. "We did it," he corrected again. In the morning, Henry delivered the box to the laundry owner. The man cut 1 bar, inspected it, nodded once. "These'll do. Bring more next month." Henry walked home slower than usual, not tired, but overwhelmed. Money in his pocket, certainty in his chest. That night, he sat at the kitchen table staring at the bills, the soap bars, the cooling racks outside. "For the first time," he said quietly, "I can see where this might go." Alma reached over and took his hand. "And we're just getting started." By the time autumn settled over New Orleans, the air carried a gentler kind of heat, less punishing, more bearable. The neighborhood still smelled of river water and frying oil, but something new had begun to weave itself into the atmosphere around the Fontenot house. The scent of soap curing on wooden racks. The backyard, once a place for children to play, was now a maze of makeshift tables, cooling trays, and drying boards. Pots bubbled almost every evening. The neighbors had stopped complaining about the smell. Some even asked when the next batch would be ready. Henry was no longer a man experimenting. He was a man producing. But the strain showed. He still worked 14 hours at the Bayou Belle, still came home bone-tired, still stirred pots until midnight. But as the weeks went on, as demand grew, a quiet realization settled into his bones. This operation had outgrown his backyard. It was Alma who said it first. One evening, as she wrapped freshly cut bars in brown paper, she glanced around the cramped kitchen. "There's no more room," she said. Henry dropped into the chair across from her, rubbing his aching wrists. "I know. We need space," she continued. "Real space. A place where you don't have to worry about storms or city inspectors or the kids knocking something over." Henry's eyes drifted toward the back door, where racks of curing soap leaned dangerously close to falling. "How much would a small place cost?" he whispered. Alma looked at him gently. "More than we can spare, but maybe not more than we can reach." Those words, "not more than we can reach," stayed with him through the night. The next day, on his way home from the restaurant, Henry noticed an old building near the riverfront, a narrow brick structure, weathered, leaning slightly, with boarded-up windows. Most people walked past it without a thought, but Henry slowed. The sign on the door read, "For rent, cheap." He pressed his hand against the dusty glass. Inside, he saw nothing but empty floorboards, a rusted sink, a broken table, and a single hanging light bulb. But he saw more. He saw space. He saw possibility. He saw a place where his grandmother's craft could become something more than a backyard dream. That night, he brought Alma to see it. She walked the length of the room slowly, touching the walls, running her fingers across the windowsill. "It's rough," she said. Henry nodded. "I know. It's small, smaller than I hoped." She turned to him, eyes softening. "But it's ours if we want it." The price was low. Low because the building had been forgotten. Low because no one else wanted it. But even low was a mountain for a family carrying debts like stones. "We can't afford it," Henry murmured. "Not today," Alma agreed. "But can we afford not to take it?" He hesitated, and that was when she whispered the words that broke something open inside him. "You always talk about wanting better. Maybe this is the first step to getting it." He looked around the empty space one more time. It wasn't much, but neither was the backyard. Neither was his life when he started. And every big change in Henry's world had begun with something small, something nobody else believed in. He signed the papers the next week. Transforming the building became their new battle. The floorboards needed patching. The sink leaked. The walls had holes big enough for stray cats to slip through. But Henry patched them one by one, after work, on weekends, at dawn, sometimes alone, often with Alma, occasionally with the children handing him nails or brushes. "Feels like we're building a future," Alma said once, running a hand along the newly painted wall. Henry smiled tiredly. "Feels like we're building a miracle." Word traveled fast in poor neighborhoods. Fontenot got a workshop now? You mean the soap man got a whole building? He moving up. Just watch. Some whispered with admiration, some with envy, some with disbelief, but they all whispered his name. Henry Fontenot, the dishwasher from the Bayou Belle, had stepped into a future nobody saw coming. The first official batch made in the new workshop filled the room with steam. Henry stirred the pot slowly, feeling the weight of years settle into his shoulders. His grandmother would have smiled, maybe even cried to see him now. As the mixture thickened, Alma leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. "You're quiet," she said. "Just thinking." "About what?" He looked down at the pot. "About how hard this is, and how far we still have to go." "But look how far you've come," she whispered. He nodded, but his eyes filled with something deeper: fear, pride, disbelief. The emotions tangled together like threads. A week later, the laundry owner returned for his monthly order. This time, he didn't come alone. He brought 2 other business owners, one from a boarding house, another from a butcher shop. They lined up, examining the soap. "How many can you make?" the boarding house owner asked. Henry hesitated. He had never thought in big numbers. 50 a month? 100? Alma stepped forward before he could answer. "He can make whatever you need," she said. Henry looked at her sharply, but she held his gaze. "We'll make it work," she said softly. And that moment, Alma giving him confidence he hadn't yet given himself, became the turning point. Orders began coming in regularly, small ones at first, then bigger, then steady. Henry found himself needing help. Not much, just one pair of hands. He hired a teenager from the neighborhood, quiet boy, good worker, paid him a few dollars a day. It felt strange to say the words, "I'm hiring you." Strange, but powerful, because it meant he had crossed a line he never thought he would cross. He wasn't just surviving, he was growing. At night, when the workshop lights glowed against the river breeze, Henry sometimes stood outside, hands on his hips, staring at the small building that carried his hopes. "I never thought this could happen," he told Alma. She slipped her hand into his. "That's the thing about life," she said. "It doesn't always ask what you think. Sometimes it just waits for you to take one brave step." He squeezed her hand. "One step," he repeated, and then another. The old building creaked in the wind. The city hummed in the distance, and Henry felt something he had never felt. Not fully, not honestly, until now. He belonged somewhere beyond the lower 9th Ward, beyond the restaurant, beyond the sink. He was becoming something new, and the world was beginning to notice. By 1974, New Orleans had changed. At least the city had. The skyline rose higher, the riverfront buzzed louder, and new businesses carved their way into old neighborhoods. But the biggest change, the one nobody would have bet on 9 years earlier, was found inside a modest brick warehouse near the water. Henry Fontenot's workshop wasn't so small anymore. What had once been a 2-room shack with cracked windows had grown into a humming, orderly space, filled with long tables, steel vats, curing racks, and the steady footwork of 5 part-time workers from the neighborhood. The smell of melting fat and fresh soap no longer drifted in accidentally. It filled the building with purpose. The sign outside, hand-painted by Alma herself, read Fontenot Soapworks. Since 1965, every time Henry walked past that sign, something happened inside him. Something quiet. Something like gratitude layered with disbelief. He still washed dishes at the Bayou Belle on weekends. "To remember where I came from," he always said. But during the week, he was no longer just Henry the dishwasher or Henry the backyard experimenter. He was Henry Fontenot, small business owner, a man with employees, a man whose product was sold in shops across Louisiana, a man who still carried every burn, every scar, every long night inside his bones. Success hadn't softened him, it had shaped him. That year, a new kind of customer appeared. Not a laundress, not a shop owner, not a fisherman looking for cheaper cleaning supplies. This man wore a beige suit and a smile that suggested he didn't step into many places like the 9th Ward. "Mr. Fontenot," the man said, extending his hand. "My name is Richard Carlyle. I represent a distribution company out of Baton Rouge. We're interested in your soap." Henry wiped his hands on his apron, cautious. "Interested how?" Carlyle walked through the workshop like he was touring an art gallery. "I've heard that your bars last longer than the commercial brands, and you use traditional methods. Authenticity sells now, Mr. Fontenot. People like to feel connected to something real." Henry raised an eyebrow. We just try to make something that works. Exactly, Carlyle said. And that's why we want to license your formula. Produce it at scale. Distribute it across the Gulf states. Henry's heart thudded once, hard. How much are you offering? Carlyle reached into his briefcase and handed Henry a typed document. Henry didn't read the numbers at first. He stared at the paper. Then he saw it. $500,000 in exchange for partial ownership and production rights. The world tilted. He had never held more than a few $100s at once in his life. The number didn't feel real. It felt like something said in movies, not in front of a man who grew up counting coins on a kitchen table. You're serious, Henry whispered. Very, Carlyle replied. Your reputation is strong. Your customers are loyal. You built something meaningful here, Mr. Fontenot. We want to help you take it further. Henry swallowed. I need time. Of course. Talk it over with your wife. Carlyle shook his hand, left a business card, and disappeared out the workshop door. Henry stood in place long after the footsteps faded. That night, Alma found him sitting at the table in silence, Carlyle's papers spread out in front of him. She touched his shoulder gently. Henry, what is it? He handed her the contract. Alma scanned the first page, then the second, then the number. Her hand flew to her mouth. Is this real? She whispered. Henry's voice cracked. He wants to buy half the company, half of something we made with our hands. She sat beside him, eyes glistening. That's not just money, she said slowly. That's enough to change everything. The house, the kids' future, our lives. Henry rubbed his forehead with both hands. What if it's a mistake? What if they take it and ruin it? What if people stop buying? What if— Alma placed a finger on his lips. Henry, listen to me. He forced himself to meet her gaze. You built something from nothing. If someone wants to pay this much for what you made, that's not luck. That's proof of who you are. He felt his chest tighten. You think we should do it? He whispered. Alma nodded, tears falling silently. I think it's time we let the world see what you really built. The room felt smaller suddenly, too full of emotion to hold it all. Henry took her hands in his. Then let's do it, he said softly. Together. The paperwork took months. Carlyle's team visited. Lawyers explained things in language Henry struggled to understand. But every time he hesitated, Alma squeezed his hand. On a warm afternoon, in a simple office downtown, Henry signed the final document. The pen trembled slightly in his hand. The moment the ink dried, the lawyer smiled. Congratulations, Mr. Fontenot. You're now one of the wealthiest independent producers in Louisiana. Henry leaned back in the chair, breath leaving him in a shaky exhale. Wealthy. The word didn't fit him. It felt too big, too loud, too clean. But it was real. $1.5 million real. He didn't buy a mansion. He didn't buy a fancy car. He didn't run from the neighborhood that shaped him. He bought a good house, strong roof, solid floor, no leaks. He paid every debt. He fixed his neighbors' porches quietly, without ever saying it was him. He donated soap to churches that had helped him when he had nothing. He sent his children to schools they once only dreamed of. And in the hallway of the new house, on a wooden plaque carved by hand, he hung a name that meant more to him than the company or the money. Marie's Soap Works, in honor of the grandmother who taught a boy to turn waste into dignity. Years later, when his grandchildren asked how he got rich, Henry would sit back in his chair, smile softly and say, "It started in an alley behind a restaurant, with a can of grease nobody wanted." He never spoke about the $1.5 million. He spoke about the choice, the work, the nights, the burns, the small steps that built a legacy no one could take from him. And every time his family gathered around the dinner table, in a house where the roof didn't leak and the plates were full, Henry felt the truth echo inside him. The poverty didn't leave quickly, but it lost the battle the moment he refused to stop trying. The table was full now, not because of luck, but because of silence, grit, and a man who believed that even discarded grease could lift a family from the ground.